Lin Chia frowned when he heard these words. He shook his head without saying anything more. At the bottom of the cliff, Lu Baoyu resolutely grabbed the protruding rock at the lowest point with bare hands, forcibly dragging his tired body and moving inch by inch along the nearly vertical wall. The howling wind whimpered in his ears as he gritted his teeth, moving forward slowly but steadily like a tireless machine. Soon after, a second figure emerged from the snow and stopped at the bottom of the cliff. Fong Mo, wearing cold weather gear, stuffed the empty compressed biscuit wrapper back into his pocket and gazed thoughtfully at the towering cliff before him. He could see a dark figure moving upward at about 1/10 of the way up the cliff. He's already made it there. A hint of conflict flashed in Fong Mo's eyes. After pondering for a moment, instead of climbing the cliff directly, he sat down and began to meditate. Time passed second by second. Only when the sun in the sky had moved directly overhead did Fong Mo slowly open his eyes, determination flashing within them. He reached out, grabbed the protrusions on the cliff and began climbing up nimbly and swiftly. By this time, Lu Baoyu had already climbed half the total height of the cliff, leaving him far behind. Shortly after Fong Mo began climbing, Su Yuan, Ding Chongfeng and other stronger recruits also crossed the frozen lake and arrived at the foot of the cliff. So high. Ding Chongfeng looked up at the nearly vertical towering cliff and couldn't help saying, "Can we really climb this?" "I don't know either." Su Yuan's expression was extremely complex. In extreme sports, free climbing is already one of the most dangerous activities. I've done some free climbing before, but neither the height nor the treacherousness could compare to this cliff. This is already a plateau with thin air, and with the interference of snow and wind, it would be extremely dangerous even with protective gear, let alone climbing barehanded. Instructor Lin will probably protect our safety. If that's the case, the probability of failure would actually be higher. Su Yuan said calmly. Free climbing tests not only the climber's strength and endurance but also willpower. For free climbing at this height, once you start, there's no turning back. Even if you're exhausted and can't persist halfway through, you can only keep climbing upward, because even if you want to rest midair, your muscles are constantly tensed while fighting against the wind and snow. During the climb, as the climber's strength gradually reaches its limit, under the dual torture of fear and exhaustion, people will uncontrollably develop thoughts of giving up. In real free climbing, when facing life and death situations, people tend to unleash their potential, forcing themselves to complete the final stretch. But if given an escape route at this point, many people might surrender before even reaching their limits. A test of willpower then. Ding Chongfeng looked up at the towering cliff and sighed. Well, let's go up, we'll have to face it sooner or later. No. We need to rest. Su Yuan said seriously. I said that once free climbing begins, there's no turning back and no time to rest midway. So before we start, we must adjust ourselves to the best condition possible. This challenge tests not only physical strength, endurance, and willpower but also calmness in extreme situations. In free climbing, the most taboo things are impetuousness and arrogance, which can cost lives. Ding Chongfeng nodded thoughtfully. I understand, sharpening the axe won't delay the wood cutting. We'll rest until afternoon before starting the climb. After speaking, Ding Chongfeng looked up again at the two figures slowly climbing the cliff, concern appearing in his eyes. Large beads of sweat rolled down Lu Baoyu's cheeks, quickly turning to frost and falling through the air. He gritted his teeth, his eyes fixed firmly on the barely visible top of the cliff, laboriously moving his hands and feet. His body was trembling uncontrollably, and his sensation in his hands and feet had become almost numb. He had crossed the snow plain and frozen lake without rest, then climbed nearly 4/5 of the cliff in one go, pushing his body to its absolute limit. He knew he was about to fail. But he couldn't accept it. He had already climbed almost to the top of the cliff, just a little bit more to go. To make him give up now was impossible. What if he had reached his limit? What if his consciousness was becoming fuzzy? He refused to accept it. Climb. Forget everything else, just climb up. He absolutely could not lose here. Lu Baoyu relied on his terrifying willpower to move his nearly senseless limbs, like an unkillable cockroach, crawling upward bit by bit through the wind and snow. But no matter how strong his willpower was, the human body always has its limits. Rip. Just as Lu Baoyu's right foot stepped on a protrusion, it completely gave way, and his entire body suddenly slipped from the cliff, helplessly falling through the cloud layer toward the ground below. Those recruits who had just started climbing or were preparing to climb all exclaimed simultaneously as they saw Lu Baoyu, who was about to reach the top, falling from the sky. In the middle of the cliff, Feng Mo's eyes slightly contracted at this sight. Without any hesitation, his body swiftly moved sideways along the cliff to the center of Lu Baoyu's falling trajectory. His right hand formed a claw and forcefully dug into the hard cliff surface, gripping tightly. Then he reached out his left hand and grabbed Lu Baoyu's wrist. The terrible kinetic energy tore at Feng Mo's body. He let out a painful grunt but didn't let go, blood seeping from his fingertips where they dug into the cliff, already injured. "What are you doing?" Lu Baoyu hung in the air, swaying in the fierce wind, and spoke coldly, "Let me go. You've climbed so high with such effort. If you fall, you'll have to start over from the beginning." Feng Mo frowned. "Then I'll start over from the beginning." Lu Baoyu looked at the top of the cliff, complexity flashing in his eyes. "I was arrogant this time. I should pay the price. But, you don't think that after I fall I won't be able to climb back up again, do you?" Lu Baoyu sneered. "Feng Mo, do you really think I'm useless? Do you think I can't accept defeat? If I made a mistake, then I made a mistake. I don't need your charity to reduce the price I should pay. Even if I fall and have to return to the starting line, I'll come back and surpass everyone, including you." After speaking, Lu Baoyu suddenly broke free from the grip, his figure quickly falling into the cloud layer below the cliff. Feng Mo stared blankly at the falling figure, sinking into silence. In his mind, only Lu Baoyu's resolute and proud expression remained when breaking free from his arm. He stood silently for a moment, took a deep breath, and continued slowly climbing toward the mountain peak. Lu Baoyu's figure fell rapidly down the cliff. Just as he was about to crash into the valley bottom and shatter, Lin Chia on the cliff opened his mouth and whispered something, causing a whirlwind to emerge from nowhere, catching Lu Baoyu and gently lowering him to the ground. Lu Baoyu had completely exhausted his physical strength. He lay powerlessly in the snow, looking up at the endless cliff, and closed his eyes. "I won't make the same mistake twice," he muttered. The wind and snow howled. The surrounding recruits came forward, wanting to help Lu Baoyu up, but he just lay quietly in the snow, motionless as if dead. At the top of the cliff, Lin Chia, who was resting with his eyes closed, showed a slight smile. At the bottom of the cliff, Su Yuan and Ding Chongfeng passed by Lu Baoyu as they were about to climb. The latter, seeing the figure gradually being buried by snow, was about to pull him up when Su Yuan stopped him. "Leave him be, he's focusing on recovering his strength." Ding Chongfeng remained silent for a moment, then sighed and walked past Lu Baoyu to begin climbing the cliff. Time passed, and by now, nearly half of the recruits had reached the bottom of the cliff and started climbing up one after another. Su Zhe bent over, hands on his knees, panting as he looked up at the cliff that reached into the clouds, bitterness appearing on his pale face. "This is killing me." After briefly resting in place, he began climbing with the main group. During training camp, the instructors had taught survival skills for extreme environments, including free climbing, but due to terrain limitations they had never actually practiced it. After climbing nearly 1/5 of the way, Su Zhe truly realized how difficult this task was. He was stiffly wedged between two protruding rocks, his arm muscles trembling from fatigue, and the increasingly thin air forced him to breathe faster. But even so, his consciousness was gradually becoming fuzzy. He took a deep breath, forcefully gathered his spirits, and continued climbing step by step toward the cliff top. By now, recruits were constantly falling from beside Su Zhe, unable to hold on. However, only a small portion of them, like Lu Baoyu, fell because they had exhausted all their strength. Most jumped down voluntarily when they felt they had reached their limit. Whenever they landed, a whirlwind would steadily catch their bodies, preventing injury. They lay powerlessly on the ground, panting heavily, despair appearing in their eyes. Bible. For them, this was an impossible task to complete. Su Zhe tried hard to distract himself from his fatigue, gritting his teeth and moving his stiff body bit by bit. Just then, a voice suddenly came clearly from above the cliff, echoing in the ears of every climbing recruit. "If you can't hold on, why not give up?" "Instructor Lin?" Su Zhe was startled. He looked up in confusion toward the barely visible cliff top. Other recruits, whether climbing, preparing to climb, or having failed to climb, similarly looked up in confusion. They all recognized Instructor Lin's voice. "If you can't climb over this mountain, it shows your strength and willpower aren't outstanding. If so, why insist on joining the Night Watchman? Lin Chia's voice rang out again, echoing in the dead silent valley. Do you know the annual death rate of Daxia's Night Watchmen? On average, 1 out of every 7 Night Watchmen dies in battle each year, a sacrifice rate that even exceeds the number of new recruits added annually. Among these fallen Night Watchmen, 95% died while eliminating mysteries. When war begins, you new recruits will have to shoulder the responsibility of protecting the city. Are you truly ready to stake your lives to protect civilians in danger? If you're not ready, it's not too late to turn back now. You don't need to persist. If you're eliminated in this training, you can withdraw halfway and return to the ordinary world, far from killing, sacrifice, and endless pain. You don't need to become Night Watchmen standing before millions. Instead, you can peacefully become one of those millions being protected. This is your last chance to choose before stepping onto this thorny path of no return as Night Watchman. As Lin Chia's words fell, the recruits below fell silent. On the cliff, among those recruits who had climbed until exhausted, some showed struggle in their eyes, some continued climbing with unwavering determination, and others painfully shouted and closed their eyes, surrendering to inner weakness, jumping down from the cliff. Suge's fingers gripped the cliff's protrusions tightly, his face extremely pale. Lin Chia's words echoed in his mind as his expression became conflicted. Was he really ready to become a Night Watchman? These months of training had indeed changed him greatly, making him completely different from the former otaku Suge. But just as Lin Chia had said, was he really prepared to sacrifice himself to protect civilians in danger? Was he really ready to walk this thorny path of no return? Not necessarily. After all, he came to participate in the new recruit training only because of his sister Su Yuan. He clearly remembered that in that car accident, both he and his sister Su Yuan awakened their forbidden domains. Afterward, the Night Watchman actively approached them, and his instinctive reaction upon receiving the recruitment was to refuse. After all, Suge was just an invisible sister complex otaku, without such lofty aspirations to protect the world. If he hadn't gotten up to use the bathroom at midnight and happened to see Su Yuan secretly packing her bags, preparing to go to Beijing alone to join the Night Watchman, he might never have left that small county town in his life. He had to admit he couldn't rest easy with Su Yuan going to the Night Watchman alone. Now, on the snow-howling cliff, Suge re-examined his original intention, questioning his heart again and again about whether he was ready to become a Night Watchman. The answer was, he wasn't. The moment this answer emerged in Suge's mind, whether intentionally or because his body had reached its limit, his hands released the cliff's protrusions, and his entire body, like a broken-winged bird, fell powerlessly from the clouds. Fang Mo gripped the protrusion at the top of the cliff with both hands, pulled hard and climbed out from the edge to sit at the mountain peak. He was breathing heavily. He was the first among all new recruits to climb over the cliff and reach the peak, and also the first to complete the 3rd stage of the test. While stretching his tense muscles, Fang Mo looked toward the peak not far away, where a figure wearing a deep red cloak sat quietly in the snow, calmly overlooking everything below. Every recruit's physical condition, mental state, their struggles shown on their faces, or the determination in their eyes, was all clearly visible under his spiritual perception, by vitamins and supplements. Seeming to notice Fang Mo's gaze, Lin Chia slightly turned his head and smiled at him. Well done, keep it up. Thank you, Lord Chia. Fang Mo bowed deeply to Lin Chia, briefly rested his body, then continued walking toward the 4th stage. Lin Chia turned his head back, continuing his monitoring and protection of the new recruits. After a long while, 2 figures climbed to the top of the cliff one after another, collapsing weakly in the snow with endless fatigue in their eyes. They were the 2nd and 3rd of this stage, Su Yuan and Ding Chongfeng. After paying their respects to Lin Chia, they slowly walked toward the distance, but after just a few steps, Su Yuan stopped, hesitated for a moment, then turned back and said solemnly to Lin Chia, "Instructor Lin, I think this elimination mode is somewhat inappropriate." Beside her, Ding Chongfeng's foot suddenly stopped mid-air, his expression becoming somewhat stiff. "Oh." Lin Chia turned his head, looking at the young woman before him in surprise. "Why? I understand you want to use this daily elimination method to maximize our potential to complete this seemingly impossible journey, but this isn't fair to many people," Su Yuan firmly said. "Physical fitness shouldn't be the only standard for judging whether a Night Watchman is qualified. As far as I know, many new recruits have powerful prohibitions, but their physical fitness isn't necessarily strong. Under the suppression of prohibitions, judging their qualification to become night watchmen solely based on physical fitness seems one-sided. Lin Chia raised an eyebrow. In the wind and snow, Su Yuan silently held Lin Chia's gaze, without a trace of fear in her eyes. After a long while, a faint smile appeared on Lin Chia's lips. I understand everything you've said. These 7 days were never just a simple test of physical fitness. As I said, this isn't an examination but a lesson. And the content of the lesson has just begun. Wasn't? Hearing these words, Su Yuan was stunned. She remembered that back on the plane, Instructor Lin had indeed said this would be the final lesson. But what exactly did he want to teach? Su Yuan couldn't figure it out, but she trusted Instructor Lin. Since he said so, there must be deeper meaning to it. I understand. Su Yuan nodded and left the cliff together with Ding Chongfeng. Su Yuan, what's wrong with you? After completely leaving the cliff, Ding Chongfeng couldn't help but ask. Instructor Lin must have his reasons for designing such a trial. I think you might be a bit impetuous. Perhaps. Su Yuan responded absent-mindedly. Anyway, we've already crossed the cliff, the most difficult hurdle. The remaining 3 stages should be manageable within 3 days. Ding Chongfeng looked at the gradually darkening sky. There's still some time before complete darkness. Let's hurry and try to reach near the ravine to spend the night. Su Yuan didn't answer. She silently stopped in her tracks. What's wrong? Ding Chongfeng asked puzzledly when he saw Su Yuan stop. Ding Chongfeng, you should continue the rest of the journey alone. Su Yuan slowly spoke. What about you? I'm a bit tired. I can wait here while you rest before we set off again. No need. Su Yuan shook her head. You go ahead, don't worry about me. Ding Chongfeng was about to say something more. Then a thought flashed through his mind, and after a moment of silence he looked at Su Yuan with a complex expression. You're not thinking of. I want to walk the path I choose. Su Yuan's expression was completely calm. I understand. Ding Chongfeng sighed and didn't insist further, instead setting off alone toward the distance. I'll wait for you all at the peak of Mount Gonger. Watching Ding Chongfeng disappear into the wind and snow, Su Yuan slowly closed her eyes, as if sensing something, then turned around and resolutely headed back toward the cliff. Night had fallen deeply. By now, more than half of the new recruits had crossed the cliff and were advancing toward the distant ravine. At the increasingly quiet base of the cliff, a hand suddenly reached out from the snow, followed by a one-eyed youth slowly standing up, his remaining eye fixed on the cliff top, sparkling with unprecedented fighting spirit. He had rested in the snow for most of the day, finally restoring his physical strength to its peak. However, one failed climbing attempt plus half a day's rest had left him far behind the main group, almost near the elimination line. Even so, there wasn't the slightest panic on his face. He just narrowed his eye and muttered, I'm back. As soon as the words fell, without any hesitation he began climbing the steep cliff, moving upward at an astonishing speed. Although he was now at the tail end of the new recruit group, this didn't stop him from starting to overtake others one by one with his superior physical condition. Buy vitamins and supplements. Several drones whizzed past above the cliff, now announcing the list of eliminated personnel. Rank 532 Luo Gang eliminated. Rank 531 Hu Shuriying eliminated. Rank 530. Hearing these emotionless mechanical voices, those new recruits lying at the bottom of the cliff, who had failed or given up climbing, remained silent. Su Zhe lay sprawled in the snow, feeling unable to move even a finger. Looking up at the wind-swept cliff top, bitterness appeared in his eyes. Su Yuan, brother can only accompany you this far. Rank 481 Su Zhe eliminated. Up on the cliff, Lu Baozhu gritted his teeth, his ranking rapidly rising with the names being called by the drones getting closer to his position. He had to surpass as many climbing recruits above him as possible to avoid this elimination. He was the only recruit who had fallen to the bottom after failing to climb, yet managed to come back. As the drone called out names increasingly closer to the front, suddenly, a figure leaped out from the cliff top. She descended rapidly from the cliff top against the crowd, like a meteor streaking across the sky. Rank 452. Su Yuan eliminated. Lin Chia sat at the top of the cliff, Witnessing Su Yuan jump down from the mountain peak without intervening and just smiled helplessly. These siblings are quite remarkable. He muttered softly, and a whirlwind carried Su Yuan's body, slowly lowering her to the ground. Upon hearing the last name, Su Zhe, lying in the snow, suddenly opened his eyes, filled with disbelief. Su Yuan? How is that possible? As Su Yuan's older brother, no one knew better than him how capable his sister was. From the beginning, he firmly believed that these 7 days of training wouldn't be difficult for Su Yuan. Even if she couldn't get first place, she definitely wouldn't be eliminated on the second day. Yet somehow her name appeared on the elimination list. Under the star-studded night sky, a young woman wrapped in winter clothing slowly approached through the snowstorm. Her boots crunching in the snow, she stopped beside him. Su Yuan looked down at him and expressionlessly extended her hand. "Hey, can you get up?" "My name isn't Hey, I'm your brother." Su Zhe couldn't help but quip, then asked puzzled, "Weren't you already over the cliff? Why did you come back?" "I got lost," Su Yuan replied flatly. "Su Zhe." Su Yuan grabbed Su Zhe's wrist with one hand, easily pulling him up from the ground. "Little sister, you didn't come back specially to keep your brother company, did you?" Su Zhe blinked. "Who would come back specially for you, you pervert?" Su Yuan rolled her eyes at him. "I told you I got lost." "Then what about becoming a night watchman? Didn't you always want to be a night watchman to protect others?" "It's just a title, not that important." Su Yuan glanced at Su Zhe, then quickly turned away. "Besides, I've learned everything I needed to learn these past few months. Even without a cloak and medal, I can still protect those I want to protect. Moreover..." Su Yuan paused, looking at the silently seated figure at the cliff top. "I feel like things might still turn around." Confusion appeared in Su Zhe's eyes. In the distant snow, humming vehicles approached rapidly, their bright searchlights shining on the siblings, making them squint. The vehicle stopped beside them and an instructor stepped down, holding a list, speaking calmly. "Su Yuan, you've been eliminated. Come with me." The Su siblings exchanged glances and reluctantly followed the instructor into the vehicle. The door closed and Su Zhe sat by the window, feeling utterly exhausted. He turned to say something but saw Su Yuan gazing through the window at the new recruits trudging along the cliff, lost in thought. Su Zhe pressed his lips together. "Instructor, where are we going? Are we being sent back tonight?" Su Zhe couldn't help asking. "Could we stay until the 7-day training is over? We don't need accommodation, just... could we at least watch the night watchman's oath ceremony?" "Sent back?" The instructor raised an eyebrow, smiling. "Who said anything about sending you back?" Su Zhe and Su Yuan were both stunned. "Being eliminated from the bottom only means you're out of this extreme hiking journey, not that your 7 days of training are over," the instructor said leisurely. "For the next 4 days, you'll be going to a new place to continue your training." Hearing this, Su Yuan's eyes lit up with spirit. "A new place? Where?" "The western border of Xia Kaish 019 Border Defense Company." The cliff. Lu Baozhu supported himself as he climbed to the highest point of the cliff, white steam escaping from his mouth, quickly frosting in the highland night air. He looked back down and now there were no other figures on the cliff. Those recruits who had fallen behind him had all been eliminated, leaving the space below black and deathly silent, like a bottomless abyss of despair. Beside him, a figure wearing a deep red cloak slowly stood up. Lin Chia brushed the snow off his clothes, walked in front of him and spoke calmly. "You shouldn't have been in this position, Lu Baozhu." Lu Baozhu kept his head down, silent. "If you had listened to my advice before the first climb and stopped to rest, you would be ahead of everyone now." Lin Chia paused. "Unfortunately, your pride and arrogance made you miss this opportunity, and almost led to your downfall. I know you're strong, the power within you and your amazing willpower give you reason to be confident and proud, but excessive arrogance and self-importance can be fatal. This time you managed to climb out of the valley through your own strength and luck, but what about next time? If you can't control your pride, sooner or later, both you and your companions will die because of it." Lu Baozhu, who had opened his mouth to speak, slowly closed it, not refuting Lin Chia's words. Instead, he stood silently with his head down for a long while before walking away alone. Over a dozen vehicles drove across the desolate land. The white belly of dawn tore through the darkness, and at the horizon's edge, the silhouettes of several buildings appeared faintly. They were small buildings painted white with red roofs, not new but very neat. High walls surrounded them, and on the stone monument at the entrance were carved several bright red characters. S111 Border Defense Company. The vehicles stopped briefly at the entrance, and after identity verification, they slowly drove in with the eliminated recruits. Su Yuan and Su Zhe got off the vehicle and, under the instructor's guidance, formed into ranks. A rugged-looking man in camouflage walked out from the small building, spoke briefly with the instructor, then turned his gaze to the 80 recruits. "So these are the temporary border defense volunteers they mentioned?" the man asked in surprise. "They're all so young, and they seem to have military bearing. Hey, which military district are you from? What made you come to such a remote place to volunteer?" "That's classified," the instructor smiled mysteriously. "They're in your care for the next few days. Don't go easy on them, use them however you see fit." "All right, I understand." Soon, the instructors boarded their vehicles and drove away under the puzzled gazes of the recruits. The man walked in front of them, his eyes scanning the group. "At ease. Attention." Looking at the neatly formed ranks of recruits, the man nodded with satisfaction and said, "For the next 4 days, you will serve as volunteers, participating in border defense duties on Xia's western border. On behalf of S119 Border Defense Company, I welcome you all." Pamir Plateau. On the other side. At the foot of the small snow-capped mountain, Xing'e, Si Xiaonan, and Leng Xian stood in front of an exposed rock wall, lost in thought. As time ticked by second, Xing'e looked at Si Xiaonan's focused face, then at Leng Xian's solemn expression and couldn't help but speak. "Are you sure you heard strange sounds here before?" "Yes." Si Xiaonan nodded calmly, pointing at the seemingly ordinary rock, and said seriously, "When we passed by here before, we heard sounds like tides coming from inside, and faintly there were dragon roars mixed in. We spent several days studying this place before, but didn't find anything unusual." Xing'e skeptically put his ear against the rock surface, and after a while his brows furrowed. "I don't hear anything." "Listen carefully, isn't there a whooshing sound? Isn't that just the wind passing through the rock crevices?" "It's different, listen more carefully." Xing'e's brows furrowed even more as he pressed his ear against the rock again, and after a while his voice became uncertain. "Maybe it is a bit different?" "I told you there was something wrong here," Si Xiaonan said with certainty. Xing'e stepped back 2 paces, flicked his finger in the void, and the black rock exploded into pieces, leaving nothing but dust and fragments in the air. "Looks like it's not here," Xing'e shook his head. "The Kunlun Mountains are so vast, trying to find the entrance to Kunlun Void one by one like this is too time-consuming. We need to try something else." "What method?" Si Xiaonan became alert. "I've heard that the divine power generated by the Great Xia's heavenly court's origin is different from other divine powers in the world. It's a special divine power called spiritual energy. Kunlun Void should be of the same origin as the heavenly court, so the real Kunlun Void should be filled with this so-called spiritual energy divine power." Xing'e pondered while taking out a strange-looking compass from his chest. "If that's the case, this item I brought will be useful. This is a compass that can resonate with divine power fluctuations. Through its ability, we might be able to sense the divine power leaking from Kunlun Void's entrance, and thus locate its position." A barely noticeable glint flashed in Si Xiaonan's eyes. "Is that so? Let me see it." She curiously reached out her hand, wanting to take the compass from Xing'e's hand, but he stepped back half a step, showing no intention of handing over the compass. "Sorry, this item was brought from the Temple of Gods. Outsiders cannot touch it casually," Xing'e said flatly. After speaking, he raised the compass in his hand and infused spiritual power into it. Strands of black light surged on the compass, beginning to search for direction. Leng Xian's eyes narrowed slightly, giving Si Xiaonan a look. "Should we take him out? Loki is listening. If we make a move now, we'll be completely exposed." Si Xiaonan shook her head. Leng Xian silently suppressed the killing intent in his eyes. A moment later, the compass locked onto a direction and Xing'e's eyes lit up. "There's divine power leaking from that direction. We don't know if it's the entrance to Kunlun Void. Let's go take a look." Si Xiaonan glanced in that direction and nodded slightly. "All right." As Si Xiaonan walked, her mind was racing. The existence of Loki's ear, while not completely monitoring their actions, did limit what she and Leng Xian could do to some extent. Without it, they might have already secretly disposed of this Azura agent from India, but now the situation was different. Without legitimate reason, they couldn't move against Xing'e, who was flying the flag of an ally, and silently assassinating a divine agent who was also at the Klein level wasn't realistic. If they were to kill him, they would need a proper reason. Si Xiaonan's eyes flickered with light. In the wind and snow, Fang Mo, wrapped in cold weather gear, trudged heavily toward the distant ravine. Suddenly, his footsteps halted as if he had discovered something, and he lifted his head to sniff the air. This scent feels so familiar. He looked around bewilderedly, finally locking onto a direction, and after hesitating for a moment, he changed his original path and quickened his pace. After about 20 minutes, he had almost reached the edge of the trial route area before slowly coming to a stop. He looked around, seeing nothing but vast white snow in all directions. He sniffed the air again, crouched down and pressed his palm into the snow beneath him, pushing away the accumulated snow. Mysterious and complex bronze patterns were revealed on the black rock beneath the snow, like an ancient teleportation array, lying dormant among the desolate snow. It's the scent of heavenly quartz spiritual energy. Fang Mo looked at the huge bronze patterns beneath him with confusion in his eyes. But how could it be here? Fang Mo's true form was the white tiger, one of the divine beasts of Great Xia, with an absolutely sensitive nose for spiritual energy. Additionally, he had previously studied as an apprentice near the heavenly court for several years, making him extremely familiar with this aura. But he couldn't understand why the scent of the heavenly court would appear in the Pamir Plateau. Should he notify the instructor? Fang Mo didn't hesitate much and turned to head back toward the cliff. The mysterious construction emanating heavenly court's spiritual energy was nothing compared to winning or losing a training session. He had just taken 2 steps when a strange smell entered his nostrils, causing his body to suddenly stiffen. He turned his head to see a man wearing a dark yellow Western-style suit slowly approaching from the foot of the mountain. The entrance to Kunlun Void should be somewhere around here. The man sensed the energy fluctuations in the earth veins, a cold smile curling at his lips. As Gaia's agent, he had an extremely keen sense for the earth's energy fluctuations. As long as Kunlun Void's entrance was hidden within this mountain range, he could easily find its location through the changes in the earth veins. This talent was also one of the reasons Olympus sent him to infiltrate Great Xia. He had previously refused to join forces with Xing'e because he wanted to keep this information for himself, as he wasn't stupid enough to become a dog for those Indian gods. While he was carefully searching for Kunlun Void's entrance, his peripheral vision caught sight of Fang Mo in the distance, and he let out a surprised sound. There's actually someone here? No, his aura. He's an agent of a Great Xia god? However, he suddenly took a step forward, his form instantly sinking into the ground, and when he reappeared, his massive body was standing in front of Fang Mo. This agent is pitifully weak. His eyes narrowed into a dangerous arc. Fang Mo's body began to tremble slightly. At such close range, the oppressive aura emanating from the man before him made Fang Mo's hair stand on end, and an unprecedented sense of mortal danger surged in his heart. He had never encountered such a powerful presence before. Until now, apart from his master and others, the strongest being he had ever met was the Klein-level Planchette spirit in Beijing, but compared to the man before him, the Planchette spirit's presence was pathetically weak. Both were Klein-level, yet how could the gap be so vast? Animal instinct made Fang Mo want to retreat immediately, but at that moment, a powerful pressure of realm pressed down on his shoulders, firmly locking him in place, unable to move an inch. Large beads of sweat seeped from his forehead, quickly freezing into frost. He stared intently at the man before him, his leg muscles tense, using all his strength just to keep from falling to his knees. Though he was a divine agent, he was still just a fledgling bird whose wings had not fully grown. At the pool level, he was completely powerless before a Klein-level divine agent. Come to think of it, I've never killed a divine agent from Great Xia before. The man narrowed his eyes, raising his right hand and casually pointing at Fang Mo's brow, sneering. If I kill you, the Great Xia god should be quite angry, right? Fang Mo's pupils suddenly contracted. Swoosh. A flash of sword light whistled through the snow, precisely striking at the man's wrist. The latter's eyes narrowed as he swiftly retreated half a step. But his speed was still a step too slow. The sharp sword tip grazed the man's palm, carving out a bloody gash. The trailing edge of the sword light, tinged with the black of night, spun half a circle in the air before hovering in place. Drops of blood fell from the sword's edge, blooming into crimson flowers in the white snow below. In the sky above the sword hilt, the light of dawn was rapidly dimming. Night was falling. With the mortal danger dispelled, Fong Emo lost his balance and stumbled backward half a step, falling to the ground. This is... He looked up at the sky, muttering. Pure darkness spread across the sky like a ferocious beast, mercilessly devouring the newborn sun, covering all light in an instant. The moment night fell, Fong Mo's heart settled, his tense muscles slightly relaxed, and a smile of relief appeared on his pale lips. That person had arrived. Today he wouldn't die. The man first looked at his palm that wouldn't heal, then raised his head to gaze at the suddenly appearing night sky, showing a surprised expression. The legendary first weapon of slaughter from Takamagara, and the power of the night goddess. Another divine agent? As if sensing something, he turned to look at the void ahead. Under the pitch-black night sky, a deep red figure mysteriously flickered into view, standing silently in front of the fallen Fong Emo amidst the wind and snow. Fong Emo, retreat first. With me here no one can harm you. He raised his right hand to rest on the white sword hilt at his waist. In the dim world, a pair of enraged golden eyes blazed like a furnace, releasing a fierce killing intent. Fong Emo gritted his teeth and without any hesitation, got up from the ground and quickly ran toward the distance. He knew very well that at his level staying on the battlefield would only burden Lin Chia. Any stray ripple from the battle could be fatal to him. Emanating the night goddess's aura, but those eyes... The man didn't even glance at the departing Fong Emo, but instead gazed at Lin Chia's flickering golden eyes, his face full of confusion. Is it Michael? Are you the night goddess's agent or the seraph's agent? Two completely different divine auras appearing simultaneously in one person. Even though he, Andre, had long walked in the mist as Gaia's earth god agent, he had never encountered such a situation. Thanks to the translation magic left by Merlin, Lin Chia could clearly understand Andre's meaning. But he had no intention of answering. Play. A crisp sword ring rang out as, white slash, blade instantly tore through the cold air, a flash of sword light ignoring space to strike directly at Andre's throat. He didn't need to know the other's identity or motives. He only knew that if he had arrived a moment later, Fong Emo would now be a corpse. Whoever dared to kill his soldier, he would kill them. Although the new recruits had passed through the cliff, they hadn't left Lin Chia's mental perception range. From the moment Fong Emo actively deviated from his route to come here, Lin Chia had been paying close attention to his movements. And the instant Andre appeared within his mental perception, Lin Chia had signaled the others via radio before rushing over at top speed. The sharp sword light suddenly appeared before Andre. The latter seemed not to have expected this sword could penetrate space, and in that critical moment he forcefully twisted his body, letting the strike narrowly miss his vital throat and instead slash solidly across his chest. A savage sword wound stretched from his shoulder all the way to his opposite lower abdomen. Though it looked severe, it wasn't fatal. A sword that can cut anything and a blade that ignores space? Andre quickly guessed the ability of that white sword, his expression turning grim. Lin Chia's unexpected attack had indeed caught him off guard, but that didn't mean he feared Lin Chia. Just a measureless level divine agent, even with two troublesome weapons, wasn't a lethal threat to him. Andre raised his right hand and casually gestured toward the sky. The ground within a 2-kilometer radius suddenly began to violently shake as several snow-covered earth serpents of rock and soil raised their heads, striking repeatedly at Lin Chia, who stood at the center. Lin Chia gripped white slash, activated night flash, and his figure swiftly vanished from the spot. How laughable. Andre sensed the slight spatial fluctuation and sneered, slowly closing his eyes as his right foot stomped heavily on the ground. The next moment, a massive eye suddenly opened between the broken ground cracks beneath his feet. Within its black sclera, a crimson pupil rapidly rotated before quickly locking onto a certain void. The giant eye's pupil slightly contracted. Bang! A muffled impact sounded as Lin Chia's figure was forcibly knocked out of space, falling from high above. He endured the sharp pain in his chest, adjusted his posture, and like a graceful wild goose stepped onto the head of an earth serpent before retreating to a broken boulder fragment. His expression was extremely grave. Judging solely from the aura of his realm, Andre's level was already at the peak of the Klein realm, and Lin Chia could also sense a trace of outer god's aura from him. If he wasn't mistaken, this should be a proxy of an outer god. From the way he easily manipulated the earth just now, the deity he represented should be related to the earth. Was it Geb, the Egyptian earth god, or Gaia, the earth goddess of Olympus? With Ijan Bai and the Aim no Murakumo sword as well as the numerous divine ruins on his body, Lin Chia wouldn't be at a disadvantage even when facing ordinary Klein realm experts. But before such a peak Klein realm outer god proxy, he seemed somewhat overwhelmed. Andre also seemed to have discovered Lin Chia's realm shortcoming and directly employed divine ruins to launch a storm-like attack. Dozens of earth and soil snakes danced wildly in the snowstorm, brushing past Lin Chia's form and striking the nearby mountainside in succession, whipping out hideous cracks. In an instant the mountains shook. Lin Chia, with his terrifying dynamic vision and agile speed, barely managed to protect himself under the siege of the earth snakes. But as his gaze fixed on the strange earth eye beneath Andre's feet, his heart sank. He didn't know what ability that eye possessed, but it seemed to have a space-locking effect. Under the gaze of that pupil, neither night flash nor Bai entry into the void could be used. If this continued, he would eventually be knocked to the ground by the surrounding earth snakes, and standing on the ground before a proxy of the earth god was an extremely dangerous thing. Lin Chia took a deep breath, raised his hand slightly, and the Aim no Murakumo sword, infiltrated by night color, flew rapidly toward him. The sword light flashed and several earth snakes surrounding Lin Chia were instantly cut open. Amidst the rain of stones, he held the sword in one hand and a knife in the other, actually charging directly toward Andre below. Since he had lost his highly mobile spatial abilities, he had to abandon ranged combat. Otherwise he would eventually be exhausted by those endless earth snakes. Andre's eyes narrowed. He didn't control the earth snakes to block Lin Chia, who wielded the Aim no Murakumo sword, but instead stepped back and fell backward toward the earth eye beneath him. Bang! His body fell into the white of the earth eye, melting into it like ice and snow. Then the huge eyeball suddenly closed, transformed into a faint light that disappeared into the ground without a trace. Since he knew that the sword in Lin Chia's hand was the legendary Aim no Murakumo that could cut through anything, Andre naturally wouldn't be foolish enough to engage in close combat with it. After all, if he were cut by that sword, even the wound wouldn't heal. This was no joke. The sharp sword light penetrated the ground, instantly creating a smooth gap in the surface. But apart from endless rubble and dust, there was no trace of Andre within Lin Chia's mental perception range. His brows furrowed slightly. At the same time, about 2 kilometers away on a snowy mountain, a strange eye suddenly opened from the rock layer. In the black eye, the crimson pupil instantly locked onto Lin Chia in the distance. Andre's figure slowly emerged from it, coldly smiling as he pointed at Lin Chia from afar. A strong sense of crisis surged in Lin Chia's heart. Without any hesitation, he pulled out the Aim no Murakumo sword that had pierced the ground, and then transformed into a shade of night, rapidly ascending toward the sky. Just as his form moved, the ground beneath him suddenly began to churn like liquid, strangely surging. Waves of liquid soil rose hundreds of meters high in an instant, faster than Lin Chia, who was escaping upward, like a rising iron curtain of earth, connecting seamlessly above Lin Chia's head. The liquid earth continued to roll like ocean waves. This earth prison hundreds of meters high, enclosing Lin Chia's body, rapidly sank toward the depths of the earth's core under the pressure of the liquid ground. 100 meters underground, 300 meters underground, 500 meters underground, 1,000 meters underground. Feeling the earth prison gradually approaching the earth's core, Andre's lips curled into a smile. He waved his hand again and the churning liquid ground stopped, turning back into a desolate land. No traces of battle, no earth prison that instantly sealed the sky, no surging earth sea. This desolate land was like a man-eating beast that had swallowed Lin Chia's body, wiped away the blood from its mouth, and then quietly retreated. He stepped forward, about to walk toward the entrance of Kunlun Void, when his peripheral vision swept across the ground and his footsteps suddenly paused. Strange murmurs emanated from the void, lingering in his ears. On the snow, a broken branch suddenly stood upright by itself, like a pencil held by someone, rapidly drawing a huge circle in the white snow. The moment the broken branch connected the beginning and end of the line in the snow, a figure wearing a deep red cloak appeared out of thin air in the center of the circle. Several slender scalpels shot out, piercing toward Andrei's throat at an astonishing speed. Andrei's eyes contracted slightly. The scene before him was too strange. The murmurs from the void, the branch drawing a circle like a pencil on its own, and the enemy appearing out of nowhere. This sudden attack method caught him off guard. Fortunately, Andrei's battle experience was extremely rich. Even though those scalpels had already reached his face, he still reacted quickly, moving his body just in time to avoid the sharp edges of the scalpels. At the same time, Qingyu, standing quietly in the circle, pushed up the black-framed glasses on his nose. The invisible threads connected to the ends of the scalpels instantly tightened, changing the trajectory of all the scalpels. The sharp blade lights cut through Andrei's body like snowflakes, slashing several narrow bloody marks on the skin of his arms and chest. Andrei retreated in pain, avoiding the attack range of those scalpels. Just as he was about to take action, a black figure shrouded in killing intent came rushing from the snowy mountain in the distance. Hee. That figure stomped the ground fiercely, leaping fearlessly from the snowy mountain like a cannonball, crashing onto the ground in the distance. A large amount of rubble mixed with snow burst into the sky, and a grim blade light mixed with a sinister laugh flashed before Andrei's face in an instant. Again 2 enemies? This thought flashed through Andrei's mind as the earth's eye beneath his feet opened once more, and his figure instantly vanished from where he stood. Boom! The black blade of killing intent cut through the air, directly shattering a small mountain peak in the distance into pieces, the explosive sound echoing through the snowstorm. Madman Chao Yuan held his blade, the killing intent around his body dancing like flames, his crimson eyes scanning the surroundings as if searching for something. From the fragments of the distant mountain peak, the earth's eye opened again and Andrei's figure emerged. He gazed at Qingyu and Madman Chao Yuan, his brows slightly furrowed. Strange abilities, overwhelming combat power. Are all of Daxia's Wuliang realm cultivators this strong? He himself was a Klein-level powerhouse, and with the divine ruins of the earth god even in the mist, he was an existence that could move unhindered. Yet strangely, the 3 Wuliang realm Daxia people he had encountered since entering Daxia all possessed methods that could harm him. This gave him a completely new understanding of Daxia's combat strength. Andrei glanced at the bleeding wounds on his body, completely unconcerned, and raised his head. Just as he was about to engage these 2 Daxia Wuliang cultivators again, a rumbling sound came from not far away. A sword light shot up from beneath the ground, easily breaking through the heavy earth. Amidst flying debris, a huge red dragon shadow rose from the depths of the earth with a flap of its wings. The massive dragon shadow spun half a circle in the air before hovering. A deep red figure, holding the Kusanagi sword in one hand, was coldly staring at Andrei, who stood on the eye of earth. Him? He actually managed to fight his way up from such depths. Andrei was shocked to see Lin Chia's familiar face. It should be noted that he had just sent Lin Chia plunging dozens of kilometers beneath the earth with his sealed ground prison. With such thick layers of rock blocking the way, even with the Kusanagi sword cutting through bit by bit, it would take at least a full day to come back up. Such a long time would have been enough for Lin Chia to suffocate to death. Unfortunately, he never imagined that Lin Chia could summon a flame-veined earth dragon. Freely traversing through the earth was one of the flame-veined earth dragon's racial talents. Combined with the Kusanagi sword breaking through rock layers along the way, even though Lin Chia had been buried deep in the earth, he was still able to return to the surface in an extremely short time. Lin Chia leapt down from Red Beauty's back, landing between Qingyu and Madman Chao Yuan, his golden eyes narrowing slightly. As soon as he discovered Andrei, Lin Chia had transmitted the information to others via radio. According to the emergency strategy Lin Chia had initially laid out, the guardians of the 2nd and 4th sections, adjacent to the 3rd section, rushed over immediately upon receiving the message. And those guarding the 2nd and 4th sections were Qingyu and Chao Yuan. Although it took some time on the road, the 2 arrived in time. How are the new recruits? Lin Chia glanced at Qingyu and asked. No problem. Most of the new recruits are in the 4th section. When I received your message, I had Fatty, who was originally guarding the 5th section, go to the 4th section to replace Chao Yuan's position, and then had Brother Zhuai go to the 5th section, and Qingyu said calmly. Lin Chia nodded. Very good. Who is this man? And Qingyu frowned as he looked at Andre standing on the Eye of Earth and asked curiously. He. Old Chao, I wasn't asking you. Don't know, Lin Chia shook his head. He speaks English and is a foreign god's agent, probably a straggler who slipped through the mist into Daxia's border to gather intelligence. He's strong. A flash of gray intent appeared in Qinyu's eyes as he began to analyze Andre's body, but he's not completely without weaknesses. You be the battle commander, old Chao, and I will coordinate with you. Lin Chia gripped the Kusanagi sword, gazing at Andre's figure, and said calmly, whatever it takes, we must stop him at the border and not let him enter Daxia. Understood. As the words fell, 3 deep red figures simultaneously darted out from the snowstorm, charging toward Andre from different directions. Boom. A deep explosion came from the distance beyond the mountain range. Si Xiaonan and Cold Xian frowned simultaneously, both looking in the direction of the sound. It's in the direction the compass is pointing, Xing'e said in surprise. Could someone have found the entrance to Kunlun Void before us? Besides you and us, are there others sent by the divine countries? Si Xiaonan asked seemingly casually. There's another divine agent from Olympus. I tried to team up with him earlier but was refused. Thinking about it now, he probably also has some means to find the entrance to Kunlun Void. Another agent who infiltrated. Si Xiaonan's heart sank slightly. She knew very well that divine agents dispatched by divine countries to infiltrate Daxia and gather intelligence couldn't possibly be weak. That agent from Olympus was likely, like her and Xing'e, at the peak of the Klein realm. Given more time, she might find an opportunity to kill Xing'e, but if 2 foreign divine agents appeared, the situation would be completely different. Trying to deceive Loki's ears and kill 2 foreign divine agents of the same realm was almost an impossible task. Cold Xian exchanged a glance with her, both with solemn expressions. We should hurry. A flash of light appeared in Xing'e's eyes. If that guy really gets there first, things could get tricky. Si Xiaonan raised an eyebrow, keenly interpreting different information from this sentence. Tricky? What? The mission given to you by the Temple of Gods should just be to infiltrate Kunlun Void and investigate the true nature of Daxia's god, right? If that's the case, having someone else enter Kunlun Void first to clear obstacles for us means we don't have to risk ourselves, and we can still follow behind to learn about Daxia's god's movements. Isn't that a good thing? Or, do you have other purposes for entering Kunlun Void? Xing'e's eyes narrowed. He was silent for a moment, then gave a cold laugh, as expected of the god of trickery's agent. Well, there's no harm in telling you. When I was at the Temple of Gods, I heard a secret from an ancient god. Legend has it that deep within Daxia's Kunlun Void, there is a hidden treasure. Treasure? Si Xiaonan frowned slightly. What's it for? Xing'e paused, then slowly said. Breaking through life's shackles, reversing fate. It can allow gods to touch the highest realm, and can also allow mortals to become gods on the spot. Northern Europe. Asgard. Towering palaces stood among the clouds. At the edge of the palace complex, magnificent rainbow light intertwined to form a bridge, cascading like a waterfall from the heavenly realm to the mortal world. At the end of this rainbow bridge, a giant clad in brilliant golden armor, holding a sacred sword, stood silently like a stone statue. He was the watchman of the rainbow bridge, and also the guardian deity stationed at the entrance between Asgard and the human world. Heimdall. Suddenly, his tightly closed eyes opened slightly, gazing at the other end of the rainbow bridge with a furrowed brow. At the far end of the rainbow bridge, a man dressed in an elegant black suit was slowly approaching. His slightly curled black hair fluttered in the wind, and his narrow eyes were as sharp as an eagle's. Loki, the golden-armored Heimdall spoke in a deep voice, not hiding the disgust in his eyes. What do you want here? No need to be so tense, Heimdall. Loki smiled slightly. I'm just here to deliver an order from Odin. An order? Upon hearing these words, Heimdall's expression softened somewhat. What order? Close the rainbow bridge for the next 4 days, cut off all roads to the human world, and forbid anyone from entering or leaving Asgard. Close the Rainbow Bridge? Heimdall's brow furrowed. This bridge hasn't been closed for over 100 years. Why shut it down? Haven't you heard, Heimdall? Someone is coming to cause trouble in our Asgard. With me here no one can enter Asgard. Heimdall gripped his sacred sword, straightened his back, his golden armor gleaming in the sunlight as he spoke calmly. Heh. Loki sneered. I'm afraid you alone won't be enough. A cold glint flashed in Heimdall's eyes. Cutting off the Rainbow Bridge is Odin's order. I'm just here to tell you. Whether you do it or not is up to you, Loki said lazily. Take care of yourself, Heimdall. With those words, Loki turned and walked toward the other end of the Rainbow Bridge, ignoring Heimdall's expression. Heimdall stared at Loki's retreating figure, his hands tightly gripping the sacred sword. A murderous intent surged in his eyes, but after a moment's hesitation he took a deep breath and removed his hand from the sword hilt. He turned back to look at the Rainbow Bridge cascading from the clouds to the mortal world, conflict visible in his eyes. He raised his hand slightly, grasping the empty space before him as if holding some mysterious authority, and slowly rotated it. Then the sacred Rainbow Bridge, like a waterfall cut in half, suspended in midair. The only bridge connecting Asgard with the outside world was thus severed, entering a state of isolation from the world, just like the former high plane of heaven. At the end of the Rainbow Bridge, Loki saw this scene and raised his eyebrows slightly. Just as he was about to turn and leave, his right ear twitched slightly as if hearing something, and he let out a surprised sound. Can allow gods to touch the highest realm and also allow mortals to become gods on the spot? His narrow eyes narrowed into a dangerous arc. Great Xia. Pamir Plateau. Consecutive explosions echoed among the mountains. Andre, standing on a giant earth serpent amid the wind and snow, looked at the three crimson figures charging toward him, his face extremely grim. These three people from Great Xia were incredibly difficult to deal with. The young man leading them possessed both the power of the Seraph and the Night Goddess, while wielding the Kusanagi sword. His combat ability had completely surpassed the infinite realm. Even in a one-on-one situation he could fight Andre for several rounds. The elegant young man wearing black-framed glasses seemed to have endless mysterious abilities. The mysterious circles on the snow, the mysterious power that compressed surrounding matter into 2 dimensions, as well as frost and various poisonous mists. Once he made his move, it was impossible to defend against everything. And that black madman who only knew how to laugh stupidly was surrounded by terrifying killing intent. Although he was only at the infinite realm, he fought with a momentum exceeding climb, like a fearless mad dog. These three people were like wolves circling around him. Although none of them was his match individually, when they joined forces, each attack took a chunk out of him. Andre's wounds were increasing, and as he assessed his condition he knew he couldn't continue to engage with these 3 Great Xia people. He had infiltrated Great Xia with great difficulty to enter Kunlun Void and investigate the true nature of Great Xia's gods. If he continued fighting like this he might not even have a chance to leave this plateau alive. Moreover, if there were other Great Xia people hiding nearby who could alert their human powerhouses, his situation would become even more dangerous. Andre scanned the 3 people rapidly approaching him and quickly made a decision. Death Ground C. Andre murmured, forcefully pressing his hands against the ground below. A ripple instantly swept across all the nearby mountains. The next moment the originally solid and heavy ground suddenly melted into a black liquid, rolling rapidly like seawater. Lin Chia's eyes narrowed. He had witnessed this move before, which had trapped him deep underground. Seeing Andre use the same technique again, he immediately summoned the Flame Vein Earth Dragon, pulling up the crazed Chao Yuan and Qingyu beside him to soar into the sky. Streams of black liquid surged upward, trying to seal the 3 of them. Seeing this, Andre's eyes flashed with a gleam of intelligence as he fell backward into the ground sea, dissolving without a trace. When he reappeared he was already at the entrance of Kunlun Void. Standing on the rolling ground sea as if on solid ground, he pressed his right hand firmly on the intricate bronze patterns, fully activating his divine power. The bronze patterns etched into the ground began to shake violently along with the earth. An earthquake that swept across half of the Pamir Plateau suddenly erupted. The snow on the high mountains shattered inch by inch, rolling down like a breaking tidal wave. Fine cracks appeared on the surface of the ancient bronze patterns, quickly opening a gap large enough for a person to pass through. Illusory light danced behind the bronze patterns, and wisps of spiritual energy flowed out. André sensed the divine power fluctuations within, and a look of joy appeared in his eyes. This was indeed the place. Without any hesitation, André stepped into the illusory light and disappeared from the spot. With his departure, the churning death-ground sea gradually calmed down, returning to solid, heavy earth. Lin Chier and his two companions rode the flame-vein earth dragon down from the sky, jumping to the cracked bronze patterns. He went in, and Qingyu frowned, looking at the gap shimmering with illusory light. What exactly is this place?